that. I'm curious about what this information that you gathered from AI. It sounds exactly like what those ladies told us many years ago.
Yes. Yes, from the UN.
For sure.
Yes.
Yes,
Sure,
it's the
this
very
is
same
just
information.
this is a validation of what we were talking about at
Right.
the change
That
of
was
the
like
millennium.
25 years ago.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right,
Turn of the
exactly.
century.
But it's a repeat of that energetic dynamic. It's an affirmation. It's a dynamic that says, yes, this here's the energy.
But it's
And
the
now,
same after 25 years, it's the same amount. It's the same level.
well, 25 years ago, we were talking about it as you could make $28 million a year.
Oh,
and
okay.
still and still provide all of that, but that
Yeah,
dynamic
so
has changed when
this
we
is
put it
shifted.
that's right, when Adrian put it in front of AI this time. We went for, because we already knew, because of 9/11 and what happened with 9/11 and that whole dynamic of that situation, and that narrative came from the fact that the channel saw at 9/11, someone from Cantor Fitzgerald come on and say that, where they were bragging about after the tragedy and all of that stuff, and they basically were talking about the fact that they had transacted 13 or 14 trillion dollars a
Trillion.
year,
Trillion.
a huge trillions, huge amount of money. And someone at that time, or it's popped into the channel's head somehow, that 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 if you just did a transaction fee on just, and it doesn't even have to be, Adrian says every financial transaction. No, it could simply just be bank and the
Big
big
money.
financial ones. It doesn't even have to be an individual the individual dynamic. And so, with a number of questions, because you can't let AI, you can't ask AI just a flat out question and
Right,
get a
right,
reasonable answer. You have
right.
to, it's like a child. You have to lead it by the nose in order to get the information that you want to get. And so Adrian, after, let me think, 3 or 4 rounds with
I'll
AI,
bet.
it finally came up with the dynamic that of the 0.24 based on financial transactions alone, which basically is outside of the dynamic of the stream that governments and financial businesses are even talking about. It's beyond that. 0024.0024. Isn't that 10,000th? Isn't that what they call that? You mathematicians out there,
I
that you're into 10,000, the 10,000th of a cent?
I don't know if that's
Well,
accurate,
it's at
but
least 1,000th.
Mhm.
Now you're all going back to your elementary school fractions, eh?
I think it's I think it's 10,000.
Yeah, well, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's you know, even you could afford that.
that's just it. Nobody feels
Nobody
it
would even notice it.
because now
Yeah.
they have it that if you want to provide these things, you have to take it from the corporations or the rich people, which sets up a division.
Now,
Right. Right.
now, you give most of the grunt work to AI. Of course it's supervised, but you give most of the grunt work to AI.
Of how to distribute and
Well,
how to
AI's
do
basic
this.
task is to provide, create the trade routes, create the dynamics. What do you need? Tell humanity what you need, and humanity produces it.
So
Tell
if we
AI.
if we each go in and pump AI for that information, is that going to bring it more forward to the broader mass of people?
It could.
Could.
It could. And
Yep.
it's also how you disseminate the information. That's the thing. How will you disseminate the information? You know,
You
we're not
seed it.
we're not going to be around forever, and we were never that popular to begin with because we like busting your asses too much.
Yeah,
So,
people like the easy way out.
well, but that's all right. You know, in 50 years from now, some of you will say, "Hey, I knew them when." Hey, do you know that woman, Adrian? She was a piece of work. And that's not even to say Josh. All right. So use us while you can right now. We're with you for a little while longer if you'd and we don't mean permanently, Adrian. Adrian's so afraid he's gonna die tomorrow. He's gonna probably outlive her. All right.
So you brought up the telepathy thing,
Yes.
and this is something that I have been tracking for a couple of years with a series of um, telepathy tapes they're working on producing this documentary. And it started out with the spellers, the nonverbal spellers who are coming forward with all the vast knowledge and the wisdom and the interconnectedness and all around the universe and all that. Anyway, so then the other day I heard a speaker saying that it's possible that the focus on mental telepathy might take us away from a deeper truth of not having to think, just to interact energetically without thinking about connecting mentally.
Well, you
Does
will
that,
not
am I
have
making
to.
sense?
Well, you will not have to think in the same way as you did before. In other words, the dynamic of problem solving. Here's the basic problem. Not the basic problem, but here's the basic thing you're going to find. You can't lie.
Hmm.
You can't lie. You all have to learn how to tell the truth. And that means you have to learn how to tell the truth to yourselves as well. You
Ouch.
know? Well, but
I
that's
know.
the dynamic.
Yeah.
You think and we're going to include this, and you can cut this out if you want. That includes horny thoughts. You're gonna wear that stuff right on your sleeve.
Yeah, but so does everybody else. So, I think if you're saturated, you just laugh it off.
But yeah, there is that, but there is also the dynamic of the personal experience of it. See, you're not going to lose that. You're always going to be the receiver,
Mm.
even if you learned how to, what shall we say, limit your transmission. But
Mm.
it's more of a dynamic. You see, you don't really know because you're only getting little pieces of it right now. And
Right.
people are trying to interpret those little pieces in order to paint a big, to what shall we say, impose the rules. What are the rules around telepathy? Well, there are no rules. The rules
Yeah.
around telepathy of learn not to lie.
So I've been practicing on the animals because it gives me
Well,
confidence in my
that's
own self.
safe.
They're a lot easier to communicate with.
That's
Let me tell
right.
you.
That's safe.
All I have to do is picture what I want them to do to show me what they need, and they just do it. It's
Yep,
like,
yep. Well, horses are very intuitive in that sort of way. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely so.
yeah,
So no, but again, that's how they communicate.
right,
How often we said, you see a murmuration of birds, a whole flock of birds all flying in the same direction, and then they all change direction. How do they do that without crashing into each other? Well,
You're in
And that,
tune.
and
Yeah.
that's instinctual among the species.
Right.
And it's just that you have been taught to believe throughout your whole life that you don't have that ability. And
I
now,
believe.
with the
Yeah, I believe it's
awakening,
there.
but now with the awakening, now with the expansion of consciousness, think about it. You're not suffering, you guys, as individuals, are not really suffering growing pains as far as with the dynamic of consciousness, but look around you, and
Yeah.
so many other people are.
Mhm.
And that's why you're here to
Yeah.
help them, to help them, to have them realize, these people that are desperate because they're so poor, they're so disadvantaged. You tell them that there is a possibility here of being able to look at the dynamic of your reality and have a solution. Have them begin to imagine what it would be like to have their basic needs met, to have education, to have health care, to have basically all of the survival needs met of their lives. Who would you be if you were brought up that way? If you had all of that dynamic, who would you be? And of course, then you have to teach parenting and you have to teach people how to really love because, again, they've moved so much into those polarized positions. If you could remember one word, it's unity. If you could remember a second word, it's discernment. If you remember a third word, it's objectivity. Unity is the goal.